Hey, folks. Welcome back to Spooky Appalachia. I'm your host, Jimmy. Um, this week we have my buddy Best Virginian on.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. We hadn't done a collab in a while, have we?
It's been probably 5 or 6 months, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Time just flies, doesn't it? I feel like I talk to you all the time. It's just we hadn't. Was it when we went to Flatwoods, Braxton
No,
County?
I
Or
think we
did we do
did
something else?
something after that, but I can't remember right off what it was.
Oh, you may have came on and we did like a story or reaction video or something, right?
Yeah, we did the one UFO reaction. I think we did
Ah,
the special on the like 3 or 4
Flatwoods
story of the
Monster.
Flatwoods Monster, yeah.
Yes, that was cool. So definitely check that out if you hadn't. And Best Virginian's channel, the Best Virginian. Congrats on 1,000 subscribers, by the
Thank
way.
you. Thank you. It was an uphill battle for a long time.
Dude, I was sharing you out, telling people subscribe, subscribe, like crazy. But we got you there. Now we just got to both get monetized.
Yeah, I'm probably about a third of the way there. I'm probably by the time I hit about 3,500, I'll be close.
I'm getting close. I'm not too far off, actually. I think I'm 500 hours away or something like that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I can't wait. I mean, it's kind of a bucket list thing for me, but yeah, it'd just be cool to hit it, you know. And I hear they advertise you more after
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Once you have a certain size and certain number, then especially if you're putting over the time that they can put a certain amount of ads per video, that's when they really start
Oh,
pushing you.
cool.
So
Well, anyways, we should probably get into this story. It's a really cool one. We talked about it a little bit. I mean, it's famous where I'm at, and it's famous where you're at too, I believe. It's in a lot of books for sure.
lot of West Virginia folklore and ghost stories. Yeah.
And it's famous because supposedly it's the one the only trial in West Virginia history that a ghost testimony was used in court. That's what you always hear. But we'll get into that more in a
We'll get into it
bit.
afterwards.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's crazy. There's a lot of variations of this story, and we're gonna try and go with we're gonna let you guys know first what's the most common, the kind of the gist of it, with the most common things that are out there. And it's the story of the Greenbrier Ghost.
back
So,
in 1896, a young, beautiful woman of the age of 15 named Zana Heister met a new man in town, Edward Shue. Edward was a tall, handsome, muscular man, and when the two met, it was love at first sight. Zana's parents did not approve of the relationship due to Edward's reputation. He had divorced his first wife, and his second wife had died in what was deemed an accident. Edward wasn't having none of this, and he convinced Zana to run away with him and get married. The couple then settled into a nice home of their own, and everything was sounded pretty much perfect for Zana, right? After 2 months, the couple had married and settled in. Edward had been working out of town. He sent a neighbor boy, Anderson Jones, to check on Zana. When the boy arrived, he found Zana dead at the bottom of the steps. Anderson went to get Edward for help. After arriving, Ed sent Anderson for a doctor. When Anderson arrived with the doctor, Edward had moved Zana upstairs to the bed and put her in a dress with a scarf around her neck. Not really thinking anything of it at the time, the doctor declared she had died of natural causes. After an odd funeral where Edward wouldn't leave his deceased wife's side, Zahn was buried in a family cemetery. After this, things began to get a bit weirder. Zana's mother, Mary Heister, claimed the ghost of Zana had began visiting her. The spirit appeared to Mary 4 different times, each time revealing details only Zana would have known. Then, on the final visit, Zana revealed to her mother that she had met her demise at the hands of her husband and that he had broken her neck. Then he used the dress and scarves to hide his crime. Mary was convinced by the ghost and immediately went to the sheriff. She somehow convinced him and some of the others to dig up and exhume Zana's body. When they did, it became clear real quick that the spirit was right. Autopsy was performed and proved that she had died of a broken neck. After this, there was a short court battle where Edward was convicted. He was sentenced to prison where he died a few years later during an epidemic. This case became very famous locally because it's one of the few cases where the testimony of a ghost helped solve a crime and convict a murderer.
So that's the common stuff that I've heard the most. Is that about what you've heard the most too?
Yeah, that's the common thread between all the different accounts and the ghost story versions, the kind of more court examination versions, and kind of the urban legend stuff. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Okay. So, some of the stuff with the way I wrote it, like the let's see, we'll go back towards the beginning. Edward Shue, um, he was married 2 times before previously. I'm not sure if the family knew that and that's why they objected to it, because I've heard that they didn't find that out until later, but I've also heard that they objected to their relationship because of that. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard both of those yourself.
I heard that part of it was because she was so young when they met.
Oh, yeah, she was 15 and he was in
Yeah.
his 30s, I believe, right?
And
Okay.
the other I think they knew of the previous wife that died under mysterious circumstances, which even I've heard weird stories about, like how she died. Like
Yes,
in
I
one
heard.
account, she fell off a roof or a ladder
Uh-huh.
or something weird like that. Like there's even several different accounts of how she died.
Yeah, I heard one. He forced her to go to work with him where he was doing masonry work, and she like a big stone dropped off and hit her in the head. That,
Okay.
yeah, that was one I've heard, and yeah, I'd also heard about her falling off of a ladder. Uh, but
Yeah,
I
I
think
hadn't
those the
heard the
two.
one about the big stone. That one
Oh,
was.
okay. Um, and not I haven't heard much about the first wife that he divorced, but I did hear he was abusive and
Yeah.
physically, and
In the book by Dennis Dietz, there is kind of more of a story about their relationship. Again, it seems to be a lot more the testimony of just local people that he
mhm.
was very abusive to his first wife, and that just a mob of them got together that knew about this and just one night in the middle of the winter just kidnapped him and threw him in a lake. Yeah,
Wow.
which okay, yeah, that's but the one thing about that first marriage is a lot of I couldn't figure out when she divorced him, if it was before he went to jail or after he
That's
was
right.
in
He went
jail.
to yeah. He spent what was it was a couple years in jail, wasn't it? 1 or 2 years.
1 or 2 years, supposedly for stealing a horse, which
That's
again,
right.
there's
Back
various accounts of
yeah.
what he was in there for.
Yeah, back then, stealing a horse was a pretty serious crime
It was the
because
equivalent of like Grand Theft Auto, yeah.
yeah, because that's what people got around. I mean, I don't know what it's like today, what you get, but I mean, you don't really hear about people stealing horses. It's more they wander off and show up at somebody else's place
Yeah,
nowadays.
yeah. But
But and then his second wife, well, yeah, we kind of went into. I had also heard that he was abusive with her too. And did he? I wonder if he got ran out of town due to the mysterious death, or he left town due to that, or something, and showed up in this town. I'm
honestly, it
not sure.
wouldn't surprise me. But it also seemed like in a lot of cases that anywhere he went, like his family was kind of around.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like he had some family members near that area. But again, that's mostly from the Dennis Dietz book and another one. So I'm not completely sure about that either. But
Well,
then,
yeah, like you and I talked about, there are so many different variations and crazy tales about this that didn't that it's in one book or on one book. I haven't read about it a ton on the internet. I guess it's just mostly stuff I've heard about it. I think I guess I hadn't really looked it up that much, but I've read about it and heard stuff. Oh yeah, they got married very quickly too, didn't they?
yeah,
Two
after
months.
only about a couple months, yeah.
Ah, that's yeah. That was probably one of the biggest reasons the parents objected. That and her age. Um, And then I mean, not too long after they were married. So one thing I heard was that it doesn't make a lot of sense that he was out of town, working out of town, and somehow sent in that boy was supposedly like cleaned house for them or something,
Hmm.
and he somehow sent for him to go check on her, and he was I don't know how far away out of town he was and how that seemed a little weird, but
Yeah. It, I think at the time he was working as like a blacksmith, so I don't know how far away he would have
yeah,
been, how far of a trip that would have been. But it seems like as soon as he found out, he made it back pretty quickly.
yeah, that
He
too.
even
He got
beat
there
like the
before the
doctors
doctor
there.
was
Yeah.
there.
So he might have just been a couple towns over, not super far away.
Yeah, and yeah, what people say happened was he, strangled her, pushed her down the steps, or both. No, everything they say he strangled her. He made it look like she fell down the steps or something like that, and then
Yeah.
took off. Yeah, yeah, and sent for the boy, and then he was kind of hovering over her the whole time the doctor examined her. She was wearing completely different clothes
Hmm.
and a bunch of scarves when
He
the
put
doctor got
a
there.
very like multiple scarves and stuff on her to kind of brace her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Dang.
at the funeral, apparently he wouldn't let anyone too close to the casket
Yeah.
and even put like pillows on both sides of her neck.
To keep her. Yeah, to keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um and apparently put like a super high collared dress on her, which again,
Hid the
from the
broken neck.
mom standpoint, a lot of people who just look at this from the 100% the true crime aspect of it, that don't really believe the ghost story parts, they point at all this from like the mom probably knew and had her suspicions,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in a small town like that, everyone comes to funerals. Like, everyone in town comes to funerals, even if it's just for the meal afterwards. So
It was probably the talk of the town how weird
yeah,
he was
and
acting.
probably a lot of gossiping going on
Yeah,
about just how weird he was acting.
yeah. And so after they bury her, is when I believe her name was Mary, the mother. Is that
Yeah, Mary Heaster.
okay? So she starts seeing the ghost of Zana, and she's the. I didn't put this down, but what I have heard a lot about was she was the only one that saw the ghost,
Mm-hmm.
and it only appeared to her at night. And she starts talking about this, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's just a dream," because of that. It appears to her at night, only her, which it could have been.
Yeah,
I mean, she could have had all this stuff in her head, thinking about it from the funeral and how sketchy the whole situation was, and
just
just dreamed it
stress of
up.
the entire thing. Yeah,
I mean, when you've got stuff like that on your mind, it makes its way into your dreams for sure. But
but
it's definitely, from a paranormal perspective, a creepy story. It always creeped me out just hearing about the ghost. Apparently, the ghost visited Mary, the mother, and would reveal or revealed stuff only Zana would have known. I don't know a lot of details about the ghost showing up. I don't know if you do.
the story I was always told growing up is that like the ghost would show up, and I think it was the first couple times the ghost would show up and just tell like weird little details about things that had happened. And then the third or fourth time, like the ghost was starting to leave like it always did. And supposedly it just like rotated its head like 180 degrees
Oh
and was like, he
gosh.
broke my neck, and just disappeared. And the mom was like, yeah, we all already knew that. Like, you didn't have to. But that was a version I was always told, which
Uh-huh.
I highly doubt that is accurate. But
I
it is,
heard something. Yeah.
yeah.
One I heard was she pulled off the scarves, and it showed that her neck was broken, and then her head kind of bobbed to the side once she took off the scarves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one I heard. It's kind of cool how I mean, you live up closer to like Pennsylvania, and I'm down here in Southwest, on the border of Virginia, West Virginia, and Southwest Virginia, and we've noticed a lot of these things we've heard that are very similar and just a little bit different, and
Yeah.
it's
Just
really neat. I really like it. Um, So the next thing that there's a few different things about is the court case. Well, the mother went. What I had down was the mother went to the sheriff and convinced him to dig her up. I'd also heard that she told her son-in-law who convinced the sheriff. I mean, I could definitely see where a lot of different, where there's different variations on that. That's not I guess not too much of a super important detail.
yeah. I heard that she had been pestering the prosecuting attorney and the sheriff for like weeks on end, and they went to the state coroner. One of them went to the state coroner just to try and get like the official documentation about the autopsy, and he was just like, "Yeah, I wasn't actually able to get one because the husband was just so acting so crazy and defensive of the body." And the sheriff was like, "Oh crap! Now we're gonna have to dig her up." Like, now we're gonna have to do it. Okay.
I could see that happening.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, the coroner was just like, oh yeah, there is an autopsy report, but I straight up lied on that thing. Sorry about that.
I think back then, I think this stuff wasn't looked into quite as much as does these days.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are probably going to be like, "Oh, well, why didn't I don't know?" Yeah, yeah. I can't think of. You know what I'm saying? These days, there's a murder. It's
Oh yeah,
it's
it's
rarely
investigated
ever
and
dropped. And back then, people died more often back then. And it felt,
people died more often, and there was a bigger variety of, like, we've already talked about people falling down steps and dying, people falling off ladders and dying, people
kicked by
getting
a horse. That's something that happened a lot back
kicked
then.
in the head by a horse.
Yeah.
But when was the last time you heard of someone being killed by a giant stone landing on them? I mean,
It's been a while.
yeah. So definitely at that time, it was like, well, yeah, okay, she probably fell down steps and died. Like, this is the fifth case of it this year.
Yeah.
Don't
So
look into it too much.
yeah, that's why it wasn't really looked into all that much. The doctor there probably just kind of shrugged it off. Just another day. All right, so we talked about the convincing into. All right, so the court battle. Now I had heard, a couple different things there that they used the ghost testimony. I heard they didn't use the ghost testimony. And if you want to share what you heard, which definitely, I mean, that sounds legit to me.
Yeah, so leading up to the court case during the discovery, because when they exhumed the body, they did find that she had in fact sustained trauma to the neck, leading to her death. I believe there was a fracture in between two ligaments of the neck and spine, and then her windpipe was completely crushed. Which
Did you
was a
hear? I had heard that there were like finger marks around her neck.
bruising,
Oh, okay.
with finger marks. I don't know though, because I don't know how long in between her death and when she was exhumed, and if those
Yeah.
injuries would still be present.
Yeah.
Especially given the advances in body preservation and bombing since that time period. So I heard about that. I don't know how true that is though. But supposedly during the discovery process, obviously these ghost stories, the whole town knew them. It was the gossip of the town. And the judge basically forbade the prosecution from bringing up the ghost stories. He did not want to deal with ghost stories and the supernatural and all this. He wanted the case to be just the evidence brought forth, and nothing more, nothing less.
And it was good evidence.
It was. Because at that point it came out that they already knew his first wife left him because of abuse. His second wife died under mysterious circumstances while he had been in the penitentiary, possibly for stealing a horse. When he was initially arrested, he said that he just flat out told reporters that they did not have enough evidence to convict him of anything. And it's like, if you're innocent, what evidence? Just very bad at making himself look bad. But the defense really the only strategy they had in the case was to try and make the mother look like a nut job
Mm-hmm.
that was just obsessed with this ghost and was just seeing hallucinations all the time. So they questioned her about the ghost because the judge didn't foresee the defense
Bringing that up.
bringing in the ghost, because why would you do that? And it didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was found guilty.
And it was pretty quick, too.
Yeah, it was a very short trial, and I believe he was sentenced to life at the penitentiary. I wasn't able to look it up or not. I believe this was during the time period when the death penalty was abolished in West Virginia,
Hmm.
because of a incident that happened during a hanging where someone was decapitated. They banned hanging. They hadn't adopted the electric chair yet.
Yeah.
So instead
Old
of being
Sparky.
sentenced to death, he was convicted to life, but then he ended up dying like 4 or 5 years later. It
Yeah,
wasn't that long.
I heard that there was a flu epidemic, and he
Mm-hmm.
caught the flu and died.
Yeah,
I was
it's
looking at the dates, and that is close. 1896, when this all happened, wasn't too far from the flu.
the Spanish flu epidemic.
Yes, the
Okay,
Spanish flu. I was trying to think of
yeah,
the name of it.
yeah, that hit the penitentiary and the asylum both very hard.
I imagine
I
so.
think they lost something like 20% of the inmates because the uh, it mostly killed younger individuals.
Oh,
That's why
really?
it was so catastrophic during World War One. So a lot of the younger inmates, it just tore right through.
Huh. I had not heard that. Well, that's really interesting. Um, so after all this, okay, so I had heard that there was a second Greenbrier ghost of a woman. I don't know anything about this. I had heard that Zana's ghost still shows up in Greenbrier, and that I had heard something like in the 90s, some guy was living in that house and he got some kind of evidence. I don't know. It's just all rumors, really. I don't
Yeah,
know if you had heard anything about ongoing stuff, but I would have thought after Edward was convicted, her unfinished business was over with. But
yeah, a lot of stories I've read said that really after the fourth time, even before the trial, basically once they had exhumed the body, the haunting stopped. Um, Now, it wouldn't surprise me if there were some like residual haunting later
yeah,
on, but yeah, it for most of the stories and accounts I've heard, and it might just be because it's a nice little bow to put on the end of it that in the Ghost of Zana was never seen in, but I
yes,
don't know if that's true or not. It's probably the closest thing to a happy ending you could
uh
actually
huh,
put on a story like this.
yeah. It's a great story. I guess we've both been hearing it since we were kids. Really creepy too.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting all the little variations, and you
Yeah.
can definitely tell that this is a story that's been told and retold, and little details changed kind of as it's been passed along from town to town, community to community, and really at this point, generation to generation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very old story at this point. It still resonates with a lot of people because it's constantly being retold and brought up by both the paranormal communities and the true crime community. So it definitely has like staying power compared to a lot of other ghost stories.
Well, we could add our own little twist and say that while in prison, they made Edward pick up trash off the side of the interstate, and somebody flicked a quarter at him, and it killed
Cut him
him.
in half.
Yeah. There we go. There's our little spin on it. Oh,
And
that was
it's
great.
actually made its way into pop culture. I
Has
think there
it?
was an episode of Drunk History where they talked about it. And for a while, there was a beer named Zana's Revenge, I
Oh,
believe it was
really? That's
called. Yeah.
neat.
I forget what company made it. I think it was the same one that did like the Mothman beer and the Braxy.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
Well, I had heard of both of those, and well, yeah, they're pretty famous. Well, folks, we hope you have enjoyed this story and our discussion on it. It's definitely a very interesting one. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to revisit it with some more different details or something one day in the future. But thank you, Best Virginian, for coming on. If you haven't,
absolutely.
yeah, definitely check out his channel, The Best Virginian. He does Best Virginia travel locations, history, and dives into the paranormal on occasion too. But also, thank you to all my, yeah, I guess it's my Patreons now that it's a more of a solo channel. Thank you, Patreons: Adam, Alvin, Brandon, Charles, Chris, Danielle, Donald, Jeff, Johnny, Jordan, Julia, Linda, Misty, Cheryl, Taylor, and our content creator Patreon, Scott, who's an author. His link's in the description. Werewolf Radar Podcast, great, funny paranormal comedy podcast, and Jared King TV, who also does some great stories. Be sure to check those guys out. And thank you for tuning in. If you like this, make sure to like, subscribe, share it out, and all that jazz. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.